If you're anything like me, you love to travel. And obviously with the present climate, we're not able to. So what's the second best thing? Well, Google Street View, Google Maps, and having a virtual tour of some of your favorite locations. So I thought, why not let me take you on a few trips that I've been on to visit some of my favorite places. And of course, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to start with my favorite place in the world, Edinburgh Castle and Edinburgh, Scotland. I absolutely love this location. I love the Royal Mile, so I figured let's all go on a nice trip down the Royal Mile. All right, so let's start our tour. We're going to turn right around and head down the Royal Mile. The first part, which is named Castle Hill. No surprise, because it is the last section before you get to the castle, or the first section when you leave the castle. All right, so we're going to take a quick stop here. I want to point out these areas here. They're called closes. They dissect the Royal Mile quite consistently along the entirety of the stretch of the Royal Mile. This one heads down to Grassmarket, hence the name, the Grassmarket Close. They're the equivalent of what I would say like a laneway is in North America. You only traverse it on foot, but they're great ways to get in and out of the main touristy areas. And this one, as I mentioned, leads down to Grassmarket, which is another great location I would highly recommend. Second thing I want to point out here, and it's a little fun tidbit, this is called the Cannonball, and the reason it's called the Cannonball is here just above the right-hand corner of the bottom window, there's actually a cannonball that is embedded in the side of the building. So it's just a fun little thing to point out. It was obviously accidentally shot there, but it remains there to this day, and is just one of those fun facts when you're visiting that you can point out to the people you're with. All right, so we're going to continue down the Royal Mile, and not very far to your right, the Scotch Whisky experience. If you're a Scotch drinker, this is the place for you. You go on tours, you get to see how the Scotch Whisky is made, and purchase if you would like. I have not been, I'm not a Scotch fan, but I've heard nothing but amazing things about this location. Now, if you're looking for recommendations for gin, please hit me up. I will give you a couple great distilleries I highly recommend. To your left, Camera Obscura. This is a fun house per se, lots of mirrors, quite fun and kitschy to go to. I have not personally been, but it's packed every single time I've walked by. Part of the selling point is completely up here on the roof is a 365-degree view of the city, which you can also view electronically. Beware, it's a lot of school trips out that way, so it can be quite busy, and I do believe it is quite expensive, £16 a person, give or take. All right, so we continue down Castle Hill. So the Castle Hill portion, of the Royal Mile. All right, and at this point, sorry, I jumped ahead. You'll get to the second portion, which is Lawn Market. Now, obviously, the time of year has changed. It's a little bit busier. So we're going to head down the Royal Mile. There's some great little shops here. These are places that sell cashmere. They also sell Scottish clothing. As you can see, there's a sign for tweed. There are a lot of shops where they'll sell little trinkets and mementos of Scotland and Edinburgh specifically. All right. Now, once we get here, I'm going to take a moment and just stop and point out a great little pub here on the corner, Deakin Brody's Tavern. I highly, highly recommend this as a place to stop in for a drink. The pub itself, or the tavern itself, is named after Deacon Brody, who is a unofficial inspiration for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He was a gentleman who used to make keys. He was a locksmith in the city, and at night he would break in and rob people. And he was hung right here in this location, which we're going to talk about in 2 seconds. All right, so we're going to head down a little bit further. All right, so my apologies there. All right, so Edinburgh itself was a very small city originally, and it had a wall that surrounded it, and this is essentially the beginning of that original area. And I mentioned Deacon Brody was hung here. And this mark right here is the spot where the last gallows stood. So where they would have hung people, well, this would have been the location. All right, so let's continue down the Royal Mile, and you're going to very soon learn what it's like to be here during Fringe. Not a time of year I would plan. There we go. Lots and lots of people, so if you are not a fan of huge amounts of people, stay away from Edinburgh in August. To your right, you will see St. Giles Cathedral. This is an amazing, amazing tourist stop, I would say. The church itself is gorgeous. It is free to enter. However, if you do want to take pictures, you do need to make a donation. All right, so we continue down the Royal Mile. If my computer would cooperate. All right, so we still have St. Giles to our right. I'm going to continue down a little further. All right, I'm going to just stop here. So, two things I want to mention about this area. So, first is the real Mary King's Close. I mentioned closes are those small laneways, per se, that cut the city. Most are still available to visit and walk on, and a few are now closed. And one of those is the real Mary King's Close. So this is a location that allows you, obviously for a fee, to go in and visit and see what a close would have looked like a few hundred years ago. And what's fun about this one, or what's an interesting tidbit about this one, is that it's one of the only closes that's named after a woman. So I did find it a little... I didn't love it because it was quite staged, but if you like that kind of thing, I would highly recommend it. Here you'll find the city council, and something that I like about this area, if you head through the first arch and you are a Harry Potter fan, you will see J.K. Rowling's handprints in the ground. With her signature. So if you're a Harry Potter fan, you can literally put your hands where J.K. Rowling did. As well, anyone who's seen, or anyone who's a Marvel fan will notice that in Edinburgh, this was one of the areas that they shot in. So if you're a Marvel fan, and I'll point out another location as we go, you'll like that stop. All right, so we are on our way down the Royal Mile, the portion called High Street. Google likes to zigzag back and forth. All right, so you'll find here a little bit more restaurants. Still a few places if you want to buy souvenirs, whiskey as well. And we will soon get to my absolute favorite street in Edinburgh. And here we go, and I will turn. And this is Coburn Street. It is not written how it's pronounced, and it's not pronounced how it's written, and I'll let you figure that out. But I mentioned there was another Avengers location here. There is a great little Mediterranean place called Lila's. There we go, should be able to see it. And Scarlet Witch was thrown into that location. Also a great restaurant, highly recommend, one of my favorite places to eat in Edinburgh. So Coburn Street is great because it brings you right down to Waverley Station, and if you come in from the airport and you take buses straight down to Waverley, this is where you'll get off. And there are the hop-on, hop-off tour buses that leave right down that way. All right, so let's head down the High Street portion of the Royal Mile to a place I would highly recommend never going to. So Bella Italia is expensive and really not good food, so you can skip that. Who comes to Edinburgh to eat pasta anyway? All right. One of the places I very much frequented when I was here. So the Mitre, it's part of the Nicholson family of bars and pubs. Great, some really good finger foods. Great level of being a gin connoisseur kind of place. So if you're a gin fan, they will not disappoint you in making some great recommendations. And if you're not a gin fan, you really should be. That's my tidbit right there. And if you're too young, then you are not a gin fan, but you will be when you're older. All right, so if you're a Harry Potter fan, there are many. There are, I believe, 3 locations of the Boy Wizard stores. One on Coburn, one here, and one a little bit further up but there are, in fact, 3 locations. All right, so it gets a little bit more industrial, if you would call it that, as you head down the Royal Mile. Little less to see. People technically often don't head down this way. All right, so you also have the Writers' Museum, a fun thing to do while you're in Edinburgh. All right, so we're going to head down just a little further. So earlier I mentioned to you that there was a wall that covered the main area of Edinburgh. We saw where it was way up top at the beginning of Lawn Market, and this is in fact the end of it. And you will see markers here in the ground that show you where that ended. All right, so now we are on the other side of the street. So this was Edinburgh. This was the side of Edinburgh a few hundred years ago. And there were hundreds of thousands of people crammed into that 1 mile by 1 mile area. I would be remiss to not point out this fantastic pub, the World's End, because it is named because, well, essentially, if you were here, you were at the end of the world because the wall was there. No, it was not named after the movie. The movie came along long after the World's End was built. Stop in for a pint, some live music. You will not be disappointed. All right, so we're going to head down the last portion of the Royal Mile, and that is called Canongate. Right, so we continue down Canongate. If you're looking for some pastries, if you're looking for a few sandwiches, I recommend Mimi's Bakehouse. There's not a lot of seating. I believe there's only 3 small tables inside and 2 outside if it is summertime. But it is a great place. It also has another location in Leith. All right, so there's going to be a little bit less as we head down this way. You're down the Canongate. You're heading towards Holyrood Palace, which we'll talk about in a very brief second. You'll see that there's not as much to see down this way. All right, so there's just a few little things I like to point out when we head down this way. So I'm going a little bit faster because I don't think there's as much to see, but we will stop and take a look at the Toll Booth Tavern. This was essentially where people used to have to pay to come into Edinburgh. You would have to leave your tools or any weapons you had, and apparently it is quite haunted, based on one of the tours I took. So it is a quaint little location to check out. And of course, it is a tavern because all the good places are. All right, so we're going to take a stop for 2 seconds. Now, we can't go into this location based on where it is, but right in front of Canongate Kirkyard. Kirkyard is what they call graveyards. You're going to find the Baker's Close, and if you are an Outlander fan, you will, once you go in this way, you will recognize the location as Jamie's print house for when he lives in Edinburgh. So pop on in and feel like you're part of the Outlander set. All right, so we're going to head down to the last little stretch of the Canongate portion of the Royal Mile. Not as much here, as you can see. A few little shops, little places to get some trinkets. We're going to head down. All right, so if you're looking for inexpensive and hearty meals, the Oink restaurant, more of a takeout place, is great. I don't eat meat, but I've heard good things about what the sandwiches that you can get there. So if you do eat meat, you're welcome to try that place. All right, so we are at the bottom, and you'll see the gaudy Parliament building to your right. Everyone in Edinburgh hates it because it looks awful. It's an eyesore, and nobody in Edinburgh particularly likes the look of it. Point out this small location here. It is where the proclamations would be made, and of course, at the foot of the Royal Mile is Holyrood Palace, which is where the Queen stays when she is in Edinburgh. All right, so we're going to leave you on this beautiful site that is Arthur's Seat, yes, you can hike it, and I highly recommend it. So thanks for taking this journey with me down the Royal Mile. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and stay tuned for my next videos.